What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the round 13 GameDay Squad Football show brought to you by the GameDay Society. We're running this one a little bit differently than normal. Obviously, we normally have Zonald joining me on the show. Unfortunately, he's away this weekend, and we have a couple of back-to-back lockouts with the midweek fixtures for round 14. So what we're going to do is run two shorter episodes. It's just going to be me, but Zonald has sent through all his info, so don't worry, his input will still be here. And we'll just jump straight into it because we've got a lot to cover in a short period of time. So sit back, make sure that if you do have any questions about the episode, jump in the comments below. And if you do enjoy this kind of stuff, please give us a like and a subscribe because it does help us out a lot. But yeah, let's just jump straight into it, eh? So as always, we have a quick look at the round that was. So round 12, as you can see, it was a pretty high scoring round with a lot of big scorers. So Eze, as I'm sure we all saw, was the highest score of the round with 46.5 points, which is massive with a hat trick, coming up against the side that almost signed him in the summer. So that must be very frustrating for them. But as you can see, even after Eze, there were some massive scores all over the place in every area. So there was a lot of opportunity to score big this week. And as you can see, a lot of teams actually did. So we're hitting the 300 points there in Classic, which I kind of use as a barometer to see how the round went. Starter 223, that's still a big score as well. And gradually creeping up in each competition. So very impressive there. And we've got the weekly winners there. So congratulations to everyone who picked up a prize this week. We'll also quickly touch on the Cup as well, which is obviously now into round 3, which is very exciting for those still in it. I know it's a bit of a touchy subject because there's a lot of big names in the GameDay Squad Football community that have been knocked out already. So I won't go on too much, but we're down to 32 participants left and the prizes are starting to get great. So if you still are in the Cup, best of luck. We still have 15 of the GameDay Society Cup bounty members still in play as well, which is great because almost half of the people still in the Cup are part of the bounty. So we're going to see a lot of matchups coming over the next couple of rounds. So very exciting time in the Cup. I'm still in there but I'm coming up against a much stronger opponent than I have the last couple of weeks. No offense to everyone I've played, but this week we're starting to have to lock in. Otherwise, I can see myself getting knocked out. So hopefully everyone who's watching has a good result. Right, so that's enough about the previous rounds. Let's just jump straight into the first game of 3 where we actually get to see the lineups, which is exciting. First one I've got here is Brentford versus Burnley, kicking off early Sunday morning. This game, in the last 5 matchups, Burnley have won 3 of the 5, Brentford the other 2. They've been spread out over a bit of period, so it's probably not super relevant though. Interestingly, Brentford, when they have won, they've kept a clean sheet. What's probably more important is this season, Brentford have only lost 1 home game, which was to Manchester City, and Burnley have only won 1 away game, which was to Wolves. So the Brentford home fixture here, I think, will be pretty important in terms of the result. In saying that, we probably should be targeting the Burnley fixture anyway, because they have been struggling in the Premier League. One person who I think will go big this week is Thiago. He's been scoring pretty well the last 2 weeks. He's gone 13.6 and... Oh, sorry, no, that's not true. He's averaging 13.6. He's gone 30.5 and 17.5 in the last 2 games. And this is a good fixture for him. I think it's one that you should be seriously considering. I think Zonald agrees with me too on this one. The data, he's in the top 5 stats for a couple of things, which Burnley concede a lot of. So it's definitely one to consider. Damsgaard's the other one that I'll be looking at. He comes out pretty nicely in the stats and the projections. Should have a bit of time on the ball to be able to kind of create. So for me, he's the other one I'm looking at in this side. You could also look at the Brentford defence, just because we're looking at the result of the fixture being a Brentford win here. Vandenberg could be all right, but it might be one of those games where it's a bit uneventful and then doesn't accumulate points. The one I'd be looking at is Coyote, who, even though he's in defence, will be pushing forward and hopefully getting involved in some attacking plays. So definitely one to consider. On the Burnley side, not a whole lot that I would be looking at apart from Dubravka, just because it's one of those games where the keeper could accumulate, and there is a chance that they could keep a clean sheet, but that would just be, involved, and Brentford tend to kind of give up stats to keepers even if they do win. So for me, that would be the only person I'd be looking at, Burnley, and they're actually someone I am seriously considering this week. All right, we'll jump into the second of the three fixtures that we get the lineups for this round, and it's Sunderland versus Bournemouth. They don't have a whole heap of matchup data, but what's probably the most important is Sunderland still haven't lost at home, which is huge for a newly promoted side. And Bournemouth have been struggling away. They've only got the one win so far against Tottenham, which is a good win, but it's still a struggling, something they struggle with. So this is another one where those things alone, the location of the fixture, could be enough to predict how it goes. In terms of the lineups, there's one name that we should be looking for, which is Semenyo. Missed last week. He's a 75% chance to play. I predict he will play. The question is, do we want to start him? So if we look back at the numbers, obviously he started incredibly well this season, red hot form, but he hasn't scored a double-digit score since round 7, and we're into round 13 now. So it seems like there's been a bit of a drop-off in terms of, the start of the season, he was an automatic lock start alongside Haaland, but for now, I don't think this is a good fixture for him. I think Zonal might disagree. Obviously, it'd be nice to have him here to chat about it and have his views on the data, but for me, I don't think he's one that I'll be considering. Especially with Sunderland just being so tight in defence. The people I will be looking at for this fixture are mostly on the Sunderland side. I really like their defenders. They've been such dominant scorers, especially in the air, things like that. So they're ones that I'll be looking at. Ballard and Muller. They're two that I currently actually have in my side. Royce is a name that I think we should just be he's on the verge of a lock most weeks now. He's just consistently scoring points even when they concede. And because he has such a solid defence in front of him, he's getting opportunities, but they're not conceding, so it's great. So he's another one who I think will probably be a lock for me. The third that I like this round, but is kind of on the fence, is Xhaka. So he's been one of those consistent scorers throughout the year where he just kind of accumulates the points but doesn't go massive. But the last couple of weeks, he has struggled a bit. So I don't mind the Bournemouth matchup. As you can see there, they're a positive 1.35 for midfielders. But I don't know if he's the right pick for this week. On the Bournemouth side, obviously, we talked about Semenyo, whether he would be a good pick this week. The other one that I'd probably consider would be Senesi, just based on form and potentially just the involvement that they're going to have to actually accumulate points, regardless of a result. That's probably it for this fixture. So we'll jump into the last one for the opening games. Okay, so this is a game that I'm really excited to see the lockout lineups for, just because we can finally avoid Pep Roulette and pick some City players with a bit of confidence. So City versus Leeds, in theory, it should be a pretty good fixture for City players. Even though the numbers aren't crazy good against Leeds, City have had a lot of success against Leeds in the past. So in the last 5 games, they've had some big wins, including a 7-0 and a 4-0 win. And they just feel like they're building up to another one of those games after a couple of struggling performances. They obviously had Champions League midweek, but they did put forward a pretty reserve side, basically. Haaland didn't start. A lot of other players, big names, didn't start. They did come on because they were losing, but they didn't start, which makes me feel quite confident that, you know, they're committed to this game. Um, in terms of players that we should be watching for lockout, obviously Haaland is one that we don't need to talk about too much because I think most people will be starting him most weeks. If he didn't start in the last couple of weeks, he probably did come out ahead, but this week is one where I think he should do quite well. He has a history of scoring a couple of goals. Phil Foden is one who I quite like in this fixture. I think he's had 3 assists in the last 5 games against Leeds, and he's been he's been good, but just hasn't been scoring well. So if you looked at the GameDay Squad points, you might think that he's out of touch, but he's actually playing well. He's just not converting that into points. So in a game where potentially there could be goals, I can see him actually kind of finally getting back to that Phil Foden level of, dominance. The third one is Doku. He's, incredible form this year. He's potentially becoming one of those pep lock players that he just doesn't drop. Obviously Haaland's one, but he's kind of, he's playing so well out on the wing, and he's, getting points. So he's one that if he starts, we should definitely be considering. I think he matches up pretty well against Leeds too. Obviously, there's not a heap of data for him in history, but the stats that he does well in, Leeds concede. The final one that I'm interested in for City is Cherki. So he started slow with injury. Once he came in, him and Haaland just linked up incredibly. He got a bunch of assists and I think even a couple of goals in his first few games. And this is just the kind of game, I think, where he will absolutely carve it up creatively and, feed Haaland into the goal. So if he starts, I'm genuinely considering starting him even over Phil Foden, who is a known quality player. You can, now that we have some confidence in the City defence, like who's actually going to be picked, you could consider picking someone like a Diaz or a Vardiol. And Donnarumma is another one where, City should be looking for the clean sheet, but there's, they concede. So it's one where will Donnarumma get enough action if they do concede to make him a viable pick? And I don't know that he does. On the Leeds side, I don't think there's anyone that you should be looking at this fixture. Longstaff is probably the one that we would be looking at for Leeds, but he's out this week. He's injured for the next, I think, 4 to 5 weeks, it looks like the report. So don't be picking him, especially in this fixture, but he's injured, so irrelevant. The defenders as well are probably the Leeds players that we're generally looking at, and they're definitely someone we don't want to be touching in this fixture because of that big red box and negative 3.72 to defenders playing against City. So for me, City load up because this is your chance to actually not have to risk Pep Roulette, and it could be a good fixture against a newly promoted side. So yeah, load up. So the first fixture that we don't have the lineups for is Everton-Newcastle at 3:30 a.m. on Sunday. This is a game where it probably doesn't matter too much who's named because the people we'd be considering are pretty much locked to play. Historically, this has been a very low-scoring fixture with, I think, 3 goals in the last 3 meetings, lots of clean sheets. Teams don't tend to score more than 1 goal a game in this. So it's one where you're probably looking at your keepers and defenders and not so much your midfields and forwards. For the keepers, Pickford and Pope are both great options. They're both proven scorers in a fixture where there's a decent chance they'll keep a clean sheet. And for me, that's the formula I look for my keeper selection. The problem is, I don't think I want to pick both of them because I think Royce is probably a good, a better option than both of these. So it's kind of leaves one slot, and which one do you pick? Pickford's obviously come off a great game against United under the pump, huge score. Pope consistently scoring pretty well. So you can't go too wrong. You just got to lean towards which side you think is more likely to keep the clean sheet. Similar for the outfield players, so the defenders in this game. Tarkowski is a good pick most weeks. He doesn't often go massive, but he consistently scores all right. And in this fixture, where he will hopefully get bumped up by a clean sheet, I think he's a good shout this week. The other side, Newcastle, you're probably looking at your Livramentos or Shah probably would be the ones that I'd be going. But again, it's more because of the clean sheet. I don't know how well these teams match up for defenders. In fact, they're both positive, but it's one where I don't think it's going to be. I think your best bet is going to be backing the clean sheet here, is what I'm trying to say. Forward of the defenders, I think the only player I'd be looking at would be Jack Grealish. He's probably actually a good shout this week. Newcastle do give up a lot of successful dribbles. I think they're second in the league for successful dribbles conceded. So it's a kind of game where Grealish can kind of run down the wing, get past people, clean up points. Doesn't matter what he does after that point, as long as he gets past them. So he's one where I think I'll be picking him. I think he's still the highest averaging midfielder, even though he hasn't had the best run of late. But he's someone who can just pick up points no matter what's actually happening in the game. Other than that, though, Bruno maybe could be a good option, but I think there's better picks this week. So for me, he's not on the radar. And strikers, I don't think there's anyone that I'll be looking at this game, just because of the lack of predicted goals here. So the fifth game of the round is Tottenham versus Fulham, which is a really tricky one to pick because the historical data for this is a bit all over the place, pretty even sharing of the wins. And this season as well, they've both been very up and down sides who have, been very good when they're good, but bad when they're bad. So I hesitate from picking too many, if any, players from this one. The one player that I don't mind, purely because their scoring will hopefully come regardless of what actually happens in the game, is Kudus. Because Fulham do tend to kind of give away a lot of fouls. They're, I think, the second highest fouls drawn when you play against them. So a player like Kudus who gets in behind a lot will get cut down. So it doesn't really matter what's happening after that because they'll get the points. Pretty grim way to think about football, but if we're just thinking about, GameDay Squad points, that's what we need. The other options might be the keepers in this one, just because a bit all over the place and they haven't been the highest scoring games. So Vicario could be all right pick. I know Zonal doesn't love him in terms of, he's a confidence player and he doesn't have a whole lot of confidence. He's, making bad mistakes. Leno's another one who's kind of been all right, but a bit all over the place too. So I think there's better options in terms of keepers. Defenders, I'd probably be looking at maybe a Van de Ven if you're thinking about picking a defender this game. A Porro could get, fouls drawn if they're pushing up higher. But I think the Van de Ven is a better pick over Porro this week. This fixture's just a bit too all over the place for me to pick anyone with confidence. So I think I'm staying away. If it does end up picking someone from this, it will be Curtis, but it's pretty unlikely at this point. So the sixth fixture is one that's pretty tricky to predict as well. That's similar to the last one, where historically this has been a very good fixture for Crystal Palace. United have really struggled to score and get results. So in general, Crystal Palace defence and keeper should be a good pick this game, like most weeks. But United's form, yes, last week was, disappointing for them, not beating a 10-man Everton. But they've made a lot of progress in the last, 6 months where they're actually becoming a threat. So it kind of all depends on what kind of mentality United bring into this game. If they are aggressive, then it could actually be a difficult one for Palace. But as it stands, all the data says that Crystal Palace defence should be good picks. United tend to give up a lot of intercepts, things like that, where they're quite aggressive this season. So they are, a bit fast and loose. Balls going forward, they turn it over. So someone like a LaCroix, who's actually playing genuine defense, will probably actually do better than a Munoz, who historically would do better than them, because a lot of this defensive scoring against United is done by genuine defenders. So for me, yes, Munoz probably will be a great pick this week, but if I would be looking more towards those genuine defenders rather than someone who's going to be, getting a lot more involved in attack. Henderson is probably, I think, one of the better picks this week for keeper, just because United give up a lot of opportunities for keepers, and he has a decent defence in front of him. So he's someone I'm seriously considering this week, and I think the numbers all suggest he's going to have a good game. On the United side, I like Bruno Fernandes historically is always a pretty decent pick. Like, regardless of what you think about how he's actually playing and the outcomes of the games and the outcomes of what he's doing on the field, he still accumulates points, which is all we care about. So he's someone that we could be considering, just like we consider any fixture. Buemo is one who I'm probably less interested in this week. I think the Crystal Palace defense will be able to hold him down a bit better. So it's probably going to be maybe Bruno if I do pick any United players this week. And as you can see, the forward scoring against Crystal Palace is quite tough, being negative 2.83, one of the worst in the leagues. So it's something that I would be avoiding any of those players that are kind of relying on a goal or a lot of attacking contributions, shots on targets, things like that, to actually get their points. So yeah, and then on the Crystal Palace side, apart from the defence, Mateta's been all right, but probably not getting the points that we need, apart from that hat-trick game. And in this fixture, I think I don't think there's going to be that many goals that I'll be picking a forward. So the next fixture is a really tricky one. Like a lot of them have been this week, but at the start of the season, this shouldn't have been an interesting fixture, but the way that both teams are playing at the moment makes it an interesting fixture, because West Ham obviously started off very poorly, starting to show glimpses of what they can do. Liverpool have just really struggled, whether it be League, Champions League, everything. They're just not playing the way that they were playing last year. Yes, they've had a lot of changes to their lineups. A lot of things have to start to click before they start doing well again. But they're a side that should be doing a lot better than they are. In saying that, there's still some selectable players here for Liverpool, even though, they've let us down a lot this year, these players, but there's still options. So the big one for me this round would be Salah. Purely on historical data for this fixture, he's absolutely carved up West Ham in the last 5. He scored 3 goals and 3 assists in 5. Yes, last year was crazy good for him, and he's not showing that this year. I still think he's a good shout to get on the board. And we can be pretty confident that he's going to be starting, because he's going to be losing, they're going to lose him to AFCON. So they're going to want to use him as much as possible. And also Liverpool are struggling injury-wise, and they don't drop Salah. So he's a pretty safe lock for me. One player who, even when Liverpool are playing badly, can hold their head high is Szoboszlai. He's been, the only player that's actually looked decent for them this year, and he's also converted that into points pretty handily for me. So I would consider picking him this week as well. The matchup for midfields against West Ham is pretty good. It's not as good as it was at the start of the year, though. So those numbers are starting to creep back to the normal end, but it's still a fixture that they can kind of take advantage of. There's a lot of talk about where he will play. I don't think it matters too much. Where he's named on paper doesn't necessarily correlate to where he'll play. And I think no matter where he is, he'll still be able to score well. If he does end up playing more defensive, it's almost a good thing because he's listed as a midfielder in GameDay Squad. It means that if they do concede, he doesn't, have any negative consequences of conceding a goal like a defender would. So that's one benefit, I guess, of his position. The other player that I would consider from Liverpool this week is Virgil van Dijk. West Ham concede a lot of aerial duel points, and Van Dijk, as we know, can take advantage of that massively. In round one, he absolutely dominated in the air and had a massive score. After that, he hasn't done much. This is the kind of fixture where he could do that again. The problem is, last fixture, he probably should have done something similar, and he didn't. So it is still a risk. He's not looking his usual self, but he's a quality player, and it's someone who could score really well, but then could also do like a 4 to 8 kind of score, which would be devastating for you. In terms of West Ham, Paqueta's served his ban, so he's back this week. Could be a decent option. Midfielders do score okay against Liverpool. I don't know if I'd be looking at him though, just because I think there are better options this week. Bowen, I think, could actually do all right though. A lot of the stats do line up nicely for him, so he's someone who I have been considering, even though I don't necessarily know that West Ham are going to score and win. I think he could still do all right regardless. So he's someone that I'm looking at from the West Ham side. But apart from that, I don't think there's anyone else in the best of fixtures that you'd be looking at West Ham. So against Liverpool, probably would just be those one or two. All right, next up we have Aston Villa versus Wolves, and this could be a very profitable game for GameDay Squad coaches, in that Wolves tend to be a fixture that we like to target, and Aston Villa are a side who I think can actually capitalise on this pretty well. It might actually get you some unique-ish picks too, because I think a lot of people are still of the opinion that Aston Villa are a struggling side, but in actual fact they've only lost one home fixture this year, and I mean, coming up against Wolves, who are really struggling, I think there's going to be a lot of points to be made here. So the players I would be looking at the number one is Matty Cash. I think he's possibly the best defender pick you can have this round. His stats line up pretty nicely against what Wolves tend to give up. There's pretty low risk of him giving up the clean sheet bonus points. And he can also get involved in attacking contributions offensively. So we've seen him score these worldy goals. So I just like all the different areas that he can potentially score in this round. I think he's going to be a pretty unique pick as well. So he's definitely starting for me, and hopefully he can slide through as a bit of an uncommon pick, although now I'm telling people it might not be as uncommon. The other Villa player who I would be considering would be Rodgers. At the start of the season, it was kind of Rodgers, Watkins. Who would you be picking? I think Rodgers comes out ahead now. Watkins has just been a bit too inconsistent for me. In this matchup, he's had a couple of assists in the last 5. It hasn't been the best stats, but Watkins also hasn't been the best either. Rodgers, I think, has been the better player this year, though. So he's one that I would be picking over Watkins. If you're looking at a midfielder, because you probably do want to target this fixture as much as you can, and if you do have a midfield slot, McGinn's probably the one I'd be going for, Tielemans, but McGinn, I think, would be ahead. Not the best kind of stat matchup, but still it's just a fixture where, the assists will probably come for maybe the goals, who knows. So if you are looking at a midfielder and you've got one extra slot for maybe more unique pick, I think he could be a good option. On the Wolves side, as always, I don't really rate anyone for my GameDay Squad side. If I was to pick someone, it might be one of the defenders, but then I don't know who I would be confident in picking. Aston Villa do give up some points to defenders, intercepts and tackles. They're in the top 3 conceded. So you do get opportunities to score as a defender against Aston Villa. It's just whether I trust the Wolves defenders to be able to do that, I don't know. So for me, I'm steering clear. I guess one person from Aston Villa that we didn't talk about was Martinez in goals. I don't love playing keepers against Wolves just because, yes, the numbers say that they're, a positive 2 to their average on playing against Wolves. I just don't think he's going to get the opportunities. And with him, I just worry that he's going to do something dumb, pick up a yellow, and then without having any involvements, that yellow card is just basically going to negate any clean sheet that he gets. So I would be steering clear of him. But yeah, it's basically Matty Cash and Rogers who I'm big on this week for this fixture. All right, so for the second last fixture of the round, we have Nottingham Forest vs Brighton, which, again, like every other fixture I've talked about, is going to be a tricky one to read. Forest, obviously, third manager now, they're starting to find their groove, defensively looking a lot more solid than they had been under, say, Ange. But Brighton are a very good attacking side, so it's going to be interesting how that plays out. Brighton have been struggling away from home as well this year, though, so I actually see this maybe sitting slightly in Forest's favour here. In saying that, I still really like some of the Brighton attacking options because a lot of the points that Forest are conceding this year aren't necessarily reliant on the goal scored at the end. So a lot of take-ons, things like that, successful dribbles, key passes, that's where Forest are giving up points. And people like, I think, Minte can really capitalise on this fixture. I really like him for this one. He's been in good form this season, really. He's been great. And I think this is a good one for him to match up in. Welbeck's been in good touch. I just worry that maybe the wall that is Forest defence will make it hard for him. So I would be steering clear of him. Gomez is probably the other one from Brighton that has been in good touch, but last week was a bit disappointing, but I think still could do all right. On the Forest side, Anderson's just one of those players who just seems to be getting points every week, regardless of what's happening in the game. Kind of like a Bruno Fernandes type scorer where it doesn't matter how the game's going, how he's actually impacting the game. He's just doing the things that get points. So Anderson, I think, is a pretty safe pick most weeks. Gibbs White, I don't mind as an attacking threat this week. A bit more of a kind of creative player. And I see Brighton conceding. I see them probably scoring, but I also see them conceding. So I think Gibbs White is a good attacking option for Forest this week. In saying that, I don't know if the stats necessarily back that up. So it's a bit of one of those gut feeling picks for me, which sometimes they do actually come off better than the stats. But I just think there's probably better midfield options than a Gibbs White, but it could be a very good unique pick if it does come off. Other than that, I think you probably, even though the Forest defence is pretty solid, we're still trying to wrap our heads around, I guess, what a par score for like a Sells is, because even though they are looking solid, that hasn't necessarily converted into game day squad points. So I would still be steering clear of them. And yeah, Brighton defence I would also be steering clear of. So it's mainly those kind of attacking threats or those midfielders that just accumulate in this one that I'll be looking for. So that brings us to the last game of the round, which is Chelsea versus Arsenal, which is clearly the best viewing game of the round because there's two quality informed sides coming up against each other. Both of them are coming off midweek Champions League games, which they both had very impressive wins against Bayern Munich and Barcelona. So that's very good, especially considering the amount of injuries that both have within their squads. But with the midweek fixture coming up next round, it does make it a bit tricky predicting who's going to be starting for them, which makes me nervous. So for Chelsea, Reece James started for them, and generally he doesn't start to like a midweek game and then play the weekend game. And that played out exactly that way last midweek, last Champions League game, I think, where he played Champions League, missed the league. So I would be staying well away from Reece James just because there's a pretty decent chance he won't play. Cucurella started or played for Chelsea midweek. I think he's more likely to start because of who's available to them. So I would be more confident in picking Cucurella. In terms of the forwards for Chelsea, Delap didn't start but came on, I believe. Pedro didn't play at all, so that should be a pretty safe pick. So could be options. The only problem is coming up against Arsenal, I don't know if they're good picks. Arsenal, they're a little bit more restricted on their rotations based on who they have available. So defensively, I think they probably played the same side they would play against a league match, especially because they came up against one of their tougher Champions League slots. Declan Rice, I think, is the kind of player who will play every game. So I would have confidence in starting him, and I think he's a very good pick this week based on a lot of the stats matchups. He comes out really nicely. Eze is one who could be a shout. Obviously, incredible week last week with a hat trick. With Gyökeres potentially still out this week, it means that he'll probably be in his favourable, more attacking role. Which, if that is the case, and hopefully he can convert again and convince Arteta that that's why they bought him. So they should keep doing that. But there is some risk that comes with that pick, because if he's not in that role, he's kind of a bit of a dud pick in terms of scoring opportunities. Other than that, I don't know who I would be looking at from Arsenal. You can go, say, Timber or someone, even maybe not Saliba, because even though they've been solid, they're not getting the points for it. But it's just a fixture that I'm a bit nervous about picking anyone, to be honest, apart from probably Declan Rice, who's comes out very good. All right, now it's time to do the team reveal for the round, and as you can see, I've gone a bit of a rogue team this week because I'm still in the cup, and this is a side that you can see on the screen that will be competing in the cup. So if you are playing against me, I mean, it probably will change by lockout, but you're getting a rough idea of my mindset. But I've gone a lot of risks this week. So Haaland, I think, picks themselves, especially with the All-Star card. I've gone Thiago, Minte, and Salah. I really like the matchups for those three. Salah should do really well. It's just should is the key word there. They haven't done what they should do for the season, basically. So hopefully it turns around and they kind of do what we know they can do. But it's still a bit of a risk. Grealish, Damsgaard, Szoboszlai, and Xhaka in the midfield. I'm missing a few of the big names that I've picked basically every week. Just because I've been scoring all right, but not amazingly. So I'm kind of mixing it up a bit this week. All of those players, I think, have decent fixtures. It's just whether they've got the scoring baseline to be able to bring it up to like a competitive score. my defense is where it gets a bit weird because I really want to start some Crystal Palace defenders because I think the matchup against United is nice because they do get a lot of attacking loose options which the defense can clean up. I also like the Muller and Ballard option, which then kind of takes away from a few other options that I want to pick. There's just too many, I guess, risky picks that I want to do. And I think this backline will change a lot by lockout. And then in goals, I've got Royce every week. I've got Dubravka in there at the moment just because I think that they can still kind of do enough in a loss to get points. But there's a good chance they'll change to someone like Henderson. Now, Zonald has sent over his side as well. He's been kind enough to let us copy it. So his is quite different to mine, but it's a lot of the players that I've talked about. So there's going to be probably a bunch of these that are coming in. He's gone quite heavy on the Crystal Palace defence with 2 defenders and a keeper. He's gone the midfield, Rice, Anderson, Sade, and Foden. And then, Docker as well. He's gone heavy on City, which is going to be good because you can see the lineups. I mean, obviously he's going to pick a good side because he's a genius, but this is, I think, it's almost a quite a bit safer side than mine, it feels. So I expect he'll probably do quite well, but I also expect he'll probably change it a fair bit from this, but just I'm sure he'll be on the socials telling us why he picked who he picked. But that's that. Okay, so as mentioned at the top of the show, we're down to 15 people left in the GameDay Society bounty. And as you can see, this is what the wedges look like. So we're going to spin the wheel to see who won this round. We'll go 1 spin. Let's see who we get. Looks like Kangarooni, who I think has one of the bigger wedges. So congratulations. We will see what you have won. So go across to the prize wheel. And as you can see, there's still a lot of good options here, including some elite packs. Still 1 All-Star left as well. So we'll give it a little shuffle and we'll give it a spin. Silver Pedro, so definitely playable, especially in the Cup. This week might be a good option, but coming up against Arsenal might be hard. But that's it for the Cup bounty prizes. Okay, so now it is giveaway time, which I'm sure everyone is excited about. So this week, rather than doing the live chat, obviously because we couldn't, we ran a bit of a Discord thing. So in order to be eligible for the prizes this week, you just had to ask questions in the Discord, which are going to be answered on the episode. So bunch of people did it. Instead of spinning the wheel this week, though, we're going to do it a bit different. I won't do this every week, but I'm just going to give a row of the pack to each person who asks a question. So everyone's a winner this week who entered. So I believe there were 8 people, so there's 9 rows in 3 packs, so I'll do it in order of who asks the question, so it's nice and fair. And then at the end, I'll just keep the last one. So let's jump over to the All-Star packs. To be honest, I don't even know if there's still All-Star cards left, but we'll open the first one. And to be honest, I don't have the names right in front of me, but when I put the video together, I will put them on the screen for everyone. So just make sure my face isn't in the way. Nope, definitely not. Actually, it will make it go a little bit larger as well. That should be good. So the first row goes to the first question asker. So we have Johnson, Botman, and McNeil. Not the best. Next up, we have Huckraz, Malin, and Drisbury Hall. Again, not the best, bit better probably. Now we have Sesko, Danso, and Henderson. So, look, overall not the best pack, but we move on to the next one. So, the next 3, hopefully we do get an all-star if they do exist. We've given away a few all-stars on the channel already, but first row for the player is Murphy, Hartman, and Reinders. So they're all pretty selectable players. They've all done well in at least 1 week this year, so that's all right. Next up, we have Van Heek, Belaba, and Pembele. So probably not as useful. Van Heek could be all right. And then last, we've got another Reinders, Xerxes, and a Platinum Burge. So not the worst pack, definitely some playable cards there, just not the all-stars that we're looking for. And the last pack goes to, so the first 2 will be the last 2 people that ask questions, and then I'll claim the last row for myself. So we have Steele, Nunes, and Sa. Oh, so whoever this was gets a diamond, which is nice. I'll leave that till last. So we got the Harry Maguire, got Selena, and then the diamond, Kamada. Okay, I mean, it's a diamond. A diamond's a diamond. And then the last row, this one's for me. We have Vandenberg, we have McGinn, and we have Kanate. So much better pack than the last 2, especially with that diamond there. But that wraps us up. So thanks for watching. If you do like this kind of stuff, make sure you do subscribe to the channel and like the video. But we'll leave it there, and we'll see you in a couple of days for round 14. So best of luck.